Welcome to the second episode on AppSec or application security. And to have this conversation, I have with me an industry professional, Anand Karyekar. So in the first episode, he set the stage talking about various aspects of the development lifecycle. He very specifically spoke about risk management, risk assessment, or threat modeling. He also spoke about what it means when you say shift left. And today, we're going to talk about something which everybody is worried about, or sometimes people do not even pay attention to it: vulnerabilities. So, one of the questions I asked Anand in the previous episode, when you factor in security right from the word go, would it increase the cost and slow down the project? But his answer was yes, but with a disclaimer. He said, if you don't do it, your cost of maintenance is going to go much, much higher. And if you're in a regulated environment, you would be penalized for being non-compliant. Because we may have all the technologies to secure the application, but one bad code or a vulnerability would give access to the threaters to your data. So there are billions and billions of applications, and as we speak, there could be so many applications which are being launched, maybe through app stores in various platforms, or even the organizations transforming their businesses and modernizing some of the applications. Or in some cases, they may not even modernize the application. They will just continue to lift and shift it to a cloud environment. And then they call it a cloud application, right? These are different perceptions. And as security professionals, these are great concerns for us. So if you do not detect the weakness right at the initial stage, we're going to have serious implications. So, Anand, the question I have for you is, how do you manage application lifecycle, and very especially when you discover vulnerabilities?
Thanks, Sujit. Once again, I'm really excited to join this conversation about different aspects of application security. In this episode, we'll be talking basically about the challenges for application security.
Sure.
So, yes, I mean, like we talked in the last episode, there are different pieces of application security that need to be built and run as a program. So, the security leadership, CISOs, need to invest in proper toolset and processes around it. Now, if you look at the entire product life cycle, we actually touched on this in the last time. If you consider security from the get-go, which is shift left paradigm, it actually leads to a better security posture and better cost management overall from the life cycle point of view. Now, when you look at the entire product life cycle, one of the biggest challenges that the application teams face right now is not just about finding vulnerabilities or having tool sets to find it or processes around it. The biggest challenge they find it is there are just too many vulnerabilities. Right? They basically get buried into this flood of vulnerabilities, and this is a huge problem. The company I was working with in the past, we were looking at thousands and thousands of different vulnerabilities across different applications, APIs, and products, for the entire division. But this is a huge problem. So teams don't know what to do about it. Right? Where should they start? So they either fix vulnerabilities which they think are important, or they go with the low balls, and the data could be misleading because they can actually fix some of the low balls and say they have fixed 20% of the vulnerabilities, and that may look like good progress, but has it really shifted the needle with respect to changing the risk profile of your application? And the third action they would take is they would basically ignore these vulnerabilities. So all of this thing really doesn't do anything with respect to improving the security posture. Now let me provide you some research data. As per the CD analysis, common vulnerability analysis done by Jerry Campbell gambling of Cisco. Just in this 5 months of 2025, 30% more CVEs were added than 2024. We are adding 132 CVEs on an average per day. And again, this here we are talking about vulnerabilities which are getting added into CVEs. There's a big backlog of unenriched data that still needs to be worked on, unenriched vulnerabilities. So if you look at another report from Ox Security, which says that just in last decade, if you look from 2015 to 2024, the number of vulnerabilities have risen by 5 times, 500%. So we're really looking at large number of vulnerabilities, and that just raises a lot of toil and pain for application security teams.
So what I'm hearing from you is I think there are more vulnerabilities than the applications.
Yes. So the rate at which we are introducing vulnerabilities is much, much faster than the rate we are fixing them.
So are you saying we are producing more vulnerabilities?
Yes.
The developers are producing more vulnerabilities than applications.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Because again, when we're adding new code, we are actually making it work with a lot of other different software systems, libraries, and components. So
Well,
eventually
yeah.
there is a potential of introducing vulnerabilities in all these interface points.
What do you see as a primary reason for introducing so many vulnerabilities?
Um, I
Is
mean,
it a human thing or what is it?
it's a function of different things.
Mhm,
Yes, if you look at the organizations and their adoption of secure software development lifecycle, you
mhm.
find organizations all over the spectrum. Right, there are organizations which really do it religiously and with a lot of maturity. But at the other end of the spectrum, you find organizations which are just running to release something out into the market, so that actually they have the foot into the business, into the sector. But security is an afterthought. So because of this, varied, level or varied spectrums, we are basically introducing security quite a bit, because again, for business, it is important to actually grow and sustain the business, right? Security is a business enabler, but just trying to, develop maturity from, from software security development lifecycle point of view is not necessarily the first thing that the businesses want to do. That's just the
Right.
reality.
Okay. So I don't know whether I should say it's a statement or whether it's an observation, right? I'll say that first. Is it true that the hackers or the bad guys know that any which ways the organization will fix the high severity vulnerabilities? You spoke about that 20%, right? If you say 20% of my vulnerabilities are in the bucket where you call it critical or high severity vulnerabilities, they know that it'll get fixed. So the question is it true that the hackers spend a lot of time trying to piece together medium and low vulnerabilities, chain them together, and launch attacks?
Um, I would actually challenge that. I don't think
Okay.
even the organizations, get to fixing even the 20% of the vulnerabilities. Because
Okay.
again, the
So
application
you're
team
challenging
is
the first
just,
statement,
yeah. So
not the
application
second
is
one.
just inundated with,
Yeah.
lots and lots of vulnerabilities. Now, what the data tells us is, 95% of the vulnerabilities can
Mhm.
safely be ignored, or they could be deprioritized to be looked at later. Those high critical 2 to 5% of vulnerabilities, those are the ones that the organizations or applications should actually go after. But the key thing is to find those 2 to 5% vulnerabilities in this sea of vulnerabilities.
So what's the big deal? How difficult is it to find 2 to 5% of the vulnerabilities? Is it so difficult?
It is, because you're staring at, say, a dashboard,
Mhm.
which is showing you thousands and thousands of different vulnerabilities. And
Okay.
let me get to that, right? That our
Sure.
traditional way of looking at these vulnerabilities or prioritizing these vulnerabilities was CVSS, Common
Okay.
Vulnerability Scoring System. Now,
Yeah.
CVSS is good, but it is just one aspect, right?
Hmm.
CVSS is designed when you actually have good information about what your application is,
Hmm.
how it operates, with your customers and in the field, and then what the vulnerability is actually doing. Now, CVSS is good for these cases, but that is not applicable when CVSS scores are being done generically, and then they are passed downstream to the vulnerability ecosystem without context and without refinement of the scores. So we need to do much more than CVSS. So I will provide. I like to propose 4 different considerations, that organizations should consider along with
Right.
CVSS. One is business context. So what is your application doing? What business problem it's solving, and who are your customers and what environment are they operating in? And when you look at all of these things, is the vulnerability still critical?
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is exploitability. So yes, your vulnerability would be important from your business sense, but is the vulnerability exploitable by reasonable means? Or does it need
Right.
like tremendous set of resources for an attacker to exploit it? So that's a consideration. The third
Mm-hmm.
one is reachability. So you may have a vulnerability which is actually important from your business context, which is exploitable by, say, normal means. But is the vulnerable code reachable uh, in your runtime context, say in your normal context, or say in your very rare exceptional scenarios? So that's a consideration. And then the fourth one I have is exploitation. So you may have a vulnerability which is important from business context, which is exploitable by normal means, which is reachability in normal scenarios. But do we have an active exploitation for that in the field? Now, if we have an active exploitation, those are the vulnerabilities the organization should really go after. Those are your 2 to 5% of vulnerabilities. That if you go after, you are making a sizable, you're actually moving the needle in a real relevant way, in a practical way, as far as improving the security posture is concerned.
Okay. Anand, I have a concern. The concern is recently you would have heard in the news that the US government decided to terminate the funding for maintaining the CVSS database. Now, let's assume, like, fortunately for us, CISA stepped in and they said they will fund the program for the next 6 or 9 months. Let's say at the end of that period, these organizations make a statement saying we are no longer going to fund it, or even if they fund it, that data will not be available for rest of the world. Where does that leave us?
So that's a very good point, Sujit. That's a scary picture.
It is.
Because the funding crisis from the US federal government, for the CVE NVD program actually sent quite a bit of shockwaves in the application security world, right? Because again, we are just talking about enumeration, common vulnerability enumeration, but that's
Hmm.
your common communication standard. So when somebody says, quotes a CVE number, we know exactly which vulnerability they're talking about. In the absence of that, organizations wouldn't know what exactly they're talking about, and that would actually amplify all the challenges that we're already talking about. So yes, in the scenario that the US government stops funding this, what should we do? There are some entities like foundations like OWASP and OpenSSF. They actually are figuring out what should be, what needs to be done. Again, they started on this process, well before this funding crisis. So they are doing some research on figuring out what's the path forward. Whether having a CVE, common vulnerability enumeration, a centralized database, is that a path forward for future? Because that has scalability issues. So they're looking at all angles. They're actually stepping back and looking at this problem in a very larger way. So it's not just about enumeration, right? It's also about remediation. So if an
Hmm.
organization finds a remediation for a vulnerability, how can other organizations quickly benefit from it? So how can we transfer that information, cryptographically, securely, and also in privacy preserving ways? So there is research going on about this. There is also this emergence of TEA, Transparency Exchange API. So which is a
Right.
shift from centralized vulnerability database to decentralized network of vulnerability intelligence. And how can we share this intelligence more effectively? So let's see what pans out. All these things are still in work, and we'll figure out how what pans out in the year. Right now, the CB program has gotten a lease of 1 year.
Okay. So reflecting on our first episode, some of the comments or observations you made, and what we are talking right now, I just want to connect the dots. How can an organization manage all this? Can they maintain all these things in an Excel sheet? Or is there a better way of managing this whole landscape?
So I think, this is not something which could be done efficiently by single organizations or even a set of organizations.
Hmm.
So this is where the entire landscape needs to be looked at. And I think that is
Okay,
what precisely I was referring to. Some of these entities like Open, SSF, and OAups are looking at it. So they're not
right.
just looking at the NVD program or just the CVE program, but they're just trying to figure out what's the better way for the entire security landscape to better collaborate and better share this vulnerability intelligence with one another.
I want to just shift the focus to human-centric security. We are dependent on the developers and we trust their ability. How do we ensure that they are doing the best? How do we ensure that they are following the best practices? That's one question. The second part of that question is, how can an organization manage the life cycle? Anand,
Uh,
any thoughts?
so first part of your question, we all know that humans are still considered the weakest link in security. So yes, the organization can develop a lot of culture, a lot of practices through trainings and security awareness programs and things like that. They can basically raise the security profile in a significant way with some of this shift left, secure by default, a lot of these mindsets, uh, and by adopting, best practices for secure software development lifecycle and progressing and maturating on that path. But having said all of that, we humans have fallacies and we always will make mistakes. And this is where you need to have proper processes so that we can basically uh, not only catch those mistakes in advance or efficiently, I would say, in
Mhm.
time, so that we can basically turn around and provide solutions. But that's a challenge.
Right. So, are there any formal education where the developers can follow certifications?
Yeah, there are a lot of training materials
Anything
available.
which comes to the top of your mind where you would tell our viewers that they can pursue, and that would definitely help them in terms of producing good end products?
Yeah, there are a lot of certifications which touch the area of secure software development lifecycle, secure testing,
Hmm.
secure evaluations, secure assessments, and things like that. You talk about certifications from ISC2, certifications from other organizations, which basically train uh, your employees, your development workforce, so to speak, on all these different best practices of software secure development lifecycle. So we have
Right.
this, green belt, brown belt programs. A lot of different certification programs that organizations have basically, tried to, uh, 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 you know, uh, inculcate in their organizations.
Project managers, do they have to undergo this training
Yes.
and the product certifications, or they can be just do a project management certification and they're good to go?
So trainings and programs, these are basically for all the roles.
Okay.
So project managers, your product managers, TPMs, security leadership, all of them have to go through these training programs. It's not just the application developers or DevOps or testers. There are different variances of these certifications, but essentially, security is everyone's job, and everybody needs to get trained on that. So yeah, there
Right.
are different variances on that, but yeah, everyone needs to do that.
So, viewers, you heard Anand share insights into vulnerabilities and vulnerability management. And very specifically, he spoke about the importance of having knowledge and best practices in terms of development. secure software lifecycle development, right? So IC2 has certification, and I'm sure there are other organizations which offer these certifications. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Anand for guidance. The reason why I'm saying that you can reach out to him is that he's been part of some large developments, and he's been, I've seen how products are developed, maintained, and sustained, and the whole life cycle, right? So it's a good contact for you to reach out and gain insights. And those of you who are part of or live in Pune or Maharashtra can also reach out to him. So he's in that part of the world. He's part of the IC2 Pune chapter. So reach out to him, and he's a good uh, resource, and also always willing to share insights and experience, right? So he brings a lot of experience. He's been in the US, so that experience also is added to his credentials. So with that note, viewers, thank you so much for listening to us, being here, watching this video, and I'm sure you gained something for you to take back to your own respective organizations. As always, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and share it with your friends. And until I see you in the next and last episode, stay safe and take care.